Hello, everyone. Very delighted to have with us Naomi Sait. For those of you who don't know Naomi, Naomi has been into financial astrology for a very long time. She has also studied under Pandit Sanjay Rath, as well as numerous other astrologers, especially from America. I'm sure she'll tell you herself. And so please welcome, to chat with Naomi on what got her into the financial astrology with a focus on cryptocurrencies, amongst other things. So, welcome, Naomi, and thanks a lot for speaking for the Divination conference. I don't think there's that many people who do your unique combinations. So why don't you get started?
Thank you, Sonal. Thank you so much. I'm really happy and honored to be speaking at Divinations again this year. Um, I started with the niche of, well, we all start with birth charts, don't we? But that always seemed like a very subjective metric. So I thought, well, what can I test astrology on? Because at that point, around, I don't know, 10 years ago, you study it, but I wanted something that was more substantive.
Mhm.
And I thought, oh well, stocks are good, and I've seen many people do stocks too. They're famous names in the business. And at one stage, I was also studying with Barry Rosen, who's a great financial astrologer, and he does financial newsletters. And
Yes,
he's known to be, I think a
he's speaking at the conference, by
I
the
know,
way.
I know, I
Yeah.
know. And I think at one stage he was like one of the top like five gold traders in the world, right? So, I was like, okay, that's gold. But there was something with gold, I couldn't get my hands around it. The reason being, you know why? There was no chart for gold. I know that sounds silly, but there was no birth chart for gold. And I wanted something that was simple, linear. And yes, of course, I could go through gold records hysterically. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, historically.
Yeah.
So I thought, oh, there's this thing called Bitcoin. I've heard about it. And also, the unique thing is the market is 24/7. So,
Mm.
unlike the stock exchange that literally starts at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
and then Friday at 5 p.m., right? Or depending on the country,
Yeah.
sometimes 4 p.m., what have you. But I was like, but there's eclipses or there's full moons that happen on the weekend,
Yeah.
right? I wanted to see that live. And so Bitcoin was one of those things. Okay. So it was, for me, it was just something that I could measure, quantify. However, I think I spoke too soon, because after I was trying to study it and measure the birth charts, I realized there were several birth charts for Bitcoin. So, for instance, and this is why I think financial astrology is great as a component,
Mm.
but realistically, I would say no more than 15% of a decision should be on the financial. Mind you, this is not financial advice, right, Sonal? This is not
Yes.
financial
Yes,
advice.
of course.
But I'm saying, like, there are people who say, oh, I use financial astrology, and people kind of only hear that aspect of it. They forget that they actually look at dividend charts, the
Yeah.
PR, the sales, right? All these other things that come into it, the actual charts. I know whether it's candlesticks or what GAN, whichever that
Yeah.
chart you're going to be using. So for instance, I'm giving you an example of Bitcoin. There's a January 3rd chart, there's a January 9th chart of 2009. Some people use the white paper chart. And the weird thing is, it just got too much, because for each price movement, it would reflect maybe on the one, but not on the other two or three.
Mm.
You see? So then it was like, well, I can't look at all four charts and make a decision on them.
Yeah.
In retrospect, you could see it, but each chart seemed to come alive at different points.
Yeah. Yeah.
It got too complicated. Although I'm glad, because it really helped me maneuver charts, and I could see it with a lot more objectivity,
Mhm.
right? So, for instance, if you'd say a transit for a person is angry, well, that would translate to a financial market going down, right? So
Mhm.
that was a financial, product being angry. Um, but 2009 is when Bitcoin came into being, first started minting or coining and mining. But right now we're 2025. And crypto is like dog years. 1 year is anthropologically almost like a century. So, for instance, some of the people I've met or interviewed along the way, um, they've completely retired now, right? Whether it's retired out of exhaustion,
Yeah.
or they retired out of they've made so much money, or on the reverse. Believe it or not, not everyone who got into Bitcoin early made money for many different reasons. Whether they sold it, didn't buy back in, or they lost the keys to their wallet. There's many stories, but my point is, or like I said, the third is they lost money, didn't make money, and they just didn't want to be around it. So right now we've also conjoining, whereas crypto seemed very avant-garde, maybe pre-COVID. Now we have AI to contend with. And just last year, ChatGPT was at the forerunner, right? But no one uses ChatGPT anymore. Oh, well,
No.
they do, but maybe the latest paid model,
Yeah.
etc. People are like into the latest Grok or Claude or whatever. And so you look at the people who've retired from the mainstream crypto industry, then they either retired or semi-retired, or some people just don't want to be in the public eye.
Yeah.
So you lose it through retirement, you lose it through brain drain, and right now we're in a really weird place on an evolutionary state in all across the board, right? Whether it's mainstream, crypto, AI, governmental, everything is at play here.
Yeah. The
So
solar geoengineering project,
everything,
which
yes,
is shocking. Yeah.
and also, crypto is pre-COVID,
Yeah.
whereas AI is kind of COVID and then post-COVID, right? So it's almost like we have these other time markers, which is also a very Saturnian thing.
Mm.
Um, Also with Bitcoin, I do find that it wasn't just a financial instrument. It came with a lot of political and social anthropological force behind it.
Mm.
Initially, when you read the Bitcoin white paper, it was to stop inflation because at 2008, 2009, that was the subprime mortgage, right? This is when
Mm.
the banks, the main financial banking system nearly, was
Yeah.
brought to its knees. And then, we just had this whole sort of, once in a century COVID lockdown and all the issues that's come with that. So right now, I feel like we're at a weird stage anyway, but that's actually reflecting in
Mm.
the crypto market because now the crypto market has either matured or gone through a stalemate where it's like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all these meme coins where it seems like now even Doge is considered like the Bitcoin and the grandpa of meme coins. And it's really hard to keep up. So I wanted to see where we are right now in the crypto market. And right now, it just does seem the only place where there's still a lot of interest, a lot of coders still working on it on the ground are privacy coins.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk about the evolution anthropology of where we are. And I'm going to be talking about Monero and go through its chart because the chart is fantastic. And I mean, if as a homework project, I'd say, give me a chart of a privacy coin that's done well and survived the crypto
Yeah.
market, right? Because
Of
usually
course.
it's boom and bust, right? Apart from the
Yes.
coins, you hear it and you never hear it again. Monero has sort of been there for the last 10
So
years.
it's been quite steady growth then.
Yes. And it's like a dinosaur. In crypto terms, it's a dinosaur. Okay. And yet it's still there. And in code wise, there's a lot of value to it because of the privacy.
Mm.
So, yeah, that's what I'm going to speak about.
Okay, fantastic. I'm so looking forward to it because I think a lot of people, though mind you, this is not a forum for financial advice, doesn't mean you go and, uh,
No.
go and buy, but I think it is people will still um, kind of it's like for a newbie, like someone who's like a complete beginner, right? To the whole currency world. Would you, where do you think one should begin, and the second thing I also want to ask is, I do know that you have done Jyotish, you use Jyotish, of course. and you're a Jyotish Pandita. Now, but you also are very keen user of outer planets, tropical zodiac, especially Neptune, Pluto, Uranus,
Yes.
and the asteroids, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
And I do know someone, Satsri ji, and I think Kai Florence, they both are going to be using Upagrahas,
Oh,
which
wow.
I'm not sure it is the same as asteroids, but that's a separate
Yes, yes.
discussion altogether. But so I would like to know about the first one, that, for a complete beginner, where do they begin? What tips can you give us? And I'm sure we will see more of it in your talk, of course, because you don't want to give the whole thing away. Okay, so yeah, so go
You
for
know,
it.
I would say realistically, um, it's great for the learning of astrology.
Yeah,
Okay, obviously, if you're trying to trade, that's a little bit wild. There's a famous saying in the sort of amateur trading world. They were like, "Do you know how to make $1 million?" And people will say, "How?" And the answer is start with $2 million, right? Because there's just and there's real social sort of, I don't want to say disease, but there's a condition where everyone wants to beat the system, right?
yeah,
So because we're all looking at the same news feeds, whether you're looking at CNN all the way to you're
yeah,
just looking at x.com, whichever, where you lie. The problem is you think, oh, a little bit of information is going to put you across the
yeah, yeah,
line, which is why financial astrology really came into fore, because they were like, well, I don't know any of the hedge funders, so
mm,
maybe this is the information I need. But I will say this: a lot of trading bots really came into fore just before COVID. Okay, and during COVID, the bots got better,
yeah.
which meant that it was very much, it was like pre-AI. Okay, but now there are coders who know how to use the AI trading bots. So when someone thinks that they're going to trade, you are now trading against Grok, or you're trading against these people with lots of information, right? With lots of money to manipulate.
Precisely. Yeah.
You have to remember that you're not going to beat the system,
Mm.
right? You have to now, the ethos has changed because everyone thinks, oh, these Bitcoiners got really, really lucky, and they think it's like a lottery win. That's gone. That narrative is finished. People have to forget about that. That's old story. That's like saying, oh, when your grandparents say, oh, I bought my house for
Yeah.
£200.
Absolutely.
Forget
Absolutely.
it. Right? Let's
Yeah.
move on. This is
Yeah.
That's history. Okay. Um, but what's interesting is whether you follow Jyotish or you use tropical astrology. For instance, I'll give you just the Bitcoin chart as an example. In Jyotish, Jupiter is at its maximum debilitation at 5 degrees Capricorn. Okay.
Mm.
And also, it's in the seventh house. I mean, depending on which chart, but one of the main charts people use, they use a Cancer Lagna. So not only is Jupiter debilitated in its Nietzsche state, but it's at its maximum Nietzsche state. Okay. So that makes things difficult. You go, okay, well, I don't like it. That doesn't seem to make any sense because this has done so well. Okay. But we know that a Jupiter debilitation can manifest in many different ways. But tropically, what does that make it? It makes it Jupiter at 29 degrees Capricorn.
Yeah.
So it's still debilitated. So it may not be its maximum debilitation, but it's anaretic. And we know when planets are anaretic, it has its
Yeah.
own specific flavor. So my point is, even if you think, oh, I don't like my chart this way, and you try and use another, you
Yeah.
can't escape a certain flavor. Yeah. Um, I was using, once again, back to circling back to why I was trying to use this financial instrument to learn, was then I thought, oh, I'll put Chiron on. Chiron,
Mm.
which is in the West or in Greek Hellenistic, it's about the wound, right? So it's
Yeah.
it's hurtful and it's in pain. And ironically, right now Chiron is in Pisces, in late stage of Pisces, by the way.
Yes. Yes.
But which is with this other stellium in sidereally, which was making things quite interesting. But you can't you can't win all the time. A lot of things will only make sense after the fact. And you have to also remember, because of the nature of just crypto, not that past performance is any indication of future performance, right? You know, when you go to the bank, they always, you do have a pension scheme, they always say past performance has no reflection on future,
Yeah, indeed.
projections, right? The thing is, at least for instance, like let's just say we'll use General Motors or we'll use British Gas as an example, or Lloyd's Bank. You have decades of stock performance, right? So you can see the historical Saturn returns, for example, right? You can see the Jupiter
Yeah.
returns, things like that. With Bitcoin, there's still not enough data, because think, it was January 9th, 2009, and people didn't actually start trading it until like 2010.
Mm.
So that's still 15 years. That's not even one Saturn return,
Yeah. True.
right?
Half a Saturn. Yeah.
Right. So realistically, right now, we are the ones who are building up the data so that the future generations can use this information so that they can see patterns. Right now, we're still in the guinea pig phase.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. How interesting this gets, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people, at least from the subcontinent, they often want to make like quick money. You know, when you mention to people financial astrology, hey, let's make a quick buck and show me the money, and so they approach astrologers and everyone, and they want to be like, okay, tell me. And it's kind of, I just think like, what would your advice be to those? Because I mean, personally, I find it a little bit challenging to deal with, because it doesn't work like that. Of course, there are other, like KP astrology is phenomenal at, predicting and, stuff like that. But you still have to zone in into the basics and stuff like that. So, do you think the approach to, hey, let me make quick money through astrology, whatever that, astrologies it can be, is a winning approach to have?
I'm really sorry to burst the bubble, but it's you might as well just buy a lottery ticket, if that's what. No, really, because then at least you're not going to work for it, because there's so much work in astrology, right? You have to find the birth charts. There's probably not just one birth chart, there's
Yeah.
probably two or three birth charts. Then you have to do it historically, then you have to look at the daily or morning or hourly price things. Then you
Yeah.
have to decide if you're going to do it. Oh no, is that good news, is that bad news? There's a lot at play. So whereas if you can just go to the national lottery and just, so, I mean, once again, it's not financial advice. You're going to do what you're going to do,
Yeah.
right? But there's no quick fix. And I know, I've talked to some younger people, and they said, but every generation has had their lucky way, right? Whether it's stocks or buying a flat for 100,000, which is now like 2 million, what have you. I understand that. They were like, no, this is our generation's way to make money. It's crypto, right? Except it doesn't seem as broad and as egalitarian as even just buying a house. Because at least when you bought a house, you could live in it. But if you buy a cryptocurrency, just like, what are you getting out of it?
Yeah.
You,
Precisely. Yeah.
you can't live in it. And
Yeah.
at least with some stocks, mind you, not all stocks, there's a system of dividends, right?
Yeah.
So it's like getting
Absolutely.
interest
Yeah.
from the bank. The last sort of boom cycle in like 20, this is what during the lockdown, when people had nothing else to do, and governments were giving out free money, and we couldn't go out, and obviously the markets went up, and part of it was that, right? I mean, when you remember the Doge run,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was people just, we're in the thick of lockdown, okay, and this is what happened. However, what is interesting is all those gains have now just literally gone. The people who said, oh, we will formalize and establish traditional sort of banking systems within crypto, like look at Celsius, it just went bust. Look at FTX exchange with Sam Bankman Freedom, went bust. You see, so it was
Yeah. Yeah.
literally
Yeah.
boom and bust. So even if you think you're doing a good job, well, if there's bad actors in the industry, And that's another reason why right now the industry is so weird is people don't actually have a lot of faith.
Yeah, well, look at what we are laboring under, the Pisces one is going to have a far-reaching consequences. And then we go into summer, fall, we are encountering what? What are we encountering? Ketu and Mangal. So
And
that's,
Rahu is going into its own side of Aquarius.
yeah, which is always not a great thing, I mean, on the surface, it's amazing, but not sure about its far-reaching consequences on, especially regarding the real estate market, but that's another thing
Yeah.
altogether.
Well, there's also, we have to remember what crypto is competing against realistically, and it's
Yeah.
CBCDs, it's central bank digital currencies, right? The only thing is, as we know, the bigger the organization, it's harder to organize these things. And we don't know how far off governments are in enacting the CBCDs.
Hmm.
Just in the last few years, right? We see more and more places that don't take cash, right? This is now very commonplace. I think maybe especially in London, where we
Yeah.
are presently located, I would say maybe 25% of places they literally just say card only,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So then on top of that, there's fewer and fewer bank branches. That
Yeah.
no, every single neighborhood no longer has a bank. So we're seeing it. So, but is CBCDs the inevitability? Will Bitcoin be the new? We don't know. Right now, we're at such a crossroads,
Yeah.
evolutionary wise, in many ways, but financially, it's very, very weird.
It is weird.
Yeah,
And
it's really
so,
weird.
yeah.
Right now, we got a bit of Bitcoin, we still got a bit of cash, we got credit cards. We're like right now it's like a hodgepodge, right? And we've still got like the eBay sort of some people through the bartering. There's been an uptake for those who can afford it in off grid. I mean, the billionaires, forget about I'm not talking about the silver foil tin hat sort of stuff, but even when you look at sort of TikTok accounts like Ballerina Farm, for instance, her husband is they're this lovely American young Mormon couple, but they've just bought a huge ranch in Wyoming. Like that seems to be everyone's dream now, right? So it's like ironically, it's not so much the yacht, although there still is the yacht, crowd and the yacht demographic.
Hmm.
I mean, if you said 12 years ago, oh, if you become a billionaire, you're going to buy a farm, you would have said, no, that's ridiculous. You go and buy a yacht, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now
True.
there's a trend where actually there's a lot more people buying farms.
But I think somehow maybe it's like the Gen Z generation or Gen Beta or whatever, or Alpha rather. Beta is like
There's so
super.
many generations right now.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe the whole thinking is somehow they know that there may be issues with food. And if you have a big farm, you can grow your own and, that kind of a thing. I don't know. I'm just thinking, which in the bigger scheme of things, it always helps.
Yes.
So anyway, thank you very much, Naomi. And I would love, to have listened to your talk. And for those of you, all the recordings will be available a month after, and they will be for life.
But
So,
also, please
yeah,
mention that I just want to say
yeah,
I'll only be dealing with Bitcoin very little because actually I have already done a talk in
yes,
2021.
yeah,
So if you wanted to hear more specifically about Bitcoin, then Sonal can put the link up
yes,
for the 2021 talk because this time I'm going to only touch little, but I really want to explain privacy coins and more.
lovely. That'll be great.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much. And yes, I will put up the links when we get on to the talk.
Okay.
So,
Thank
cool.
you.
Thank you.